Deep in the primeval jungle, a group of native hunters moved with quiet discipline. The forest was their bloodline. Every sound, every scent, every flicker of movement was part of their world. Suddenly a tapir burst from the underbrush. It moved like wind over earth. Sleek, swift, vanishing between trees. The hunters sprang into action. Spears cut the air, but none found their mark. The animal was too quick, too clever. It led the men on a relentless chase, twisting through tangled vines and roots, deeper into the dense green. The chase became a ritual, ancient and sacred, passed from father to son. The hunters fanned out, drove the tapir toward the center of the trap. Then it happened. A cord snapped. A wooden spike launched from the earth. It pierced the tapir with brutal finality. The creature collapsed. A cry of triumph broke the silence. Voices rose not in joy but in reverence. For the forest had given a gift, and they had received it with respect. But the celebration was short. Strange footsteps echoed through the trees. Out of place. Out of rhythm. The hunters froze. Weapons lifted. Eyes sharp. The leaves parted. A group of thin and ragged strangers emerged. Their eyes were hollow. Their bodies bruised and bloodied. Flint Sky, the leader of the tribe, stepped forward, calm but commanding. He reminded the strangers that this was sacred land. Their ancestors had hunted here for generations. Their spirits lingered in the soil. No outsider could claim it. The strangers offered no threat. One stepped forward, held out a gift. Fresh fish. A gesture of peace. He asked only to pass through. Flint Sky accepted the fish, gave them some of the captured meat in return. But his eyes never softened. He told his hunters to honor the forest and respect all who sought its shelter. Then he turned his gaze to the edge of the trees. More figures were approaching. Women, elders, children, limping, bleeding, covered in the dust of fear. They were not guests. They were refugees. Their tribe had been destroyed. Their homes burned. Their people scattered. They had fled without food, without weapons, without hope, seeking only a place to begin again. Flint Sky said nothing, but his eyes spoke the sorrow of ancestors. He told his men to forget what they had seen, to speak no word of the encounter, because fear, once spoken, would grow. It would spread through the hearts of the tribe, cracking their unity, turning warriors into shadows. He called for his son, Jaguar Paw, looked into his eyes, and gave him the most sacred command a father could offer. Do not let fear enter your spirit. It is not the weapon that kills. It is the fear that controls. When your mind is clear, the gods will walk beside you. The hunting party returned as the sun dipped low. Shadows stretched long across the forest floor. Children ran from their huts. Laughter rang like music. Women clapped and cheered. The scent of roasting meat soon filled the air. The village glowed in golden firelight. That night the tribe gathered around the fire. Sparks rose into the dark canopy. The elders prepared a tale. The one chosen was called Greed. An old story, carved into memory. A man once wandered the forest, lost and filled with sorrow. The animals took pity. The eagle gave him sharp sight. The panther gave him claws. The snake gave him wisdom in exchange for its own life. But the man was not content. He wanted more. And when there was nothing left to give, he began to take, to rob, to kill. His greed grew so vast it swallowed his soul. He became a hollow thing, a walking corpse. Jaguar Paw listened in silence, his face lit by flickering flames. In his mind he saw the wounded faces of the refugees. The little boy whose feet were raw from running. The old woman who could barely breathe. He wondered if the ones who had destroyed them had once been like that man in the story. That night he dreamed. In the dream he stood before an altar. A man was held down, his chest opened by a blade. Blood poured like a river. The heart beat in the priest's hand. Still alive. Still watching. The man's eyes locked with his own. The lips did not move. But the voice came anyway. Run. Escape. Jaguar Paw woke with a jolt. His skin drenched. The fire had died. The jungle outside breathed slowly. But something inside him was trembling. Before dawn touched the treetops, before birds sang, the horror began. A rush of shadows swept over the land. Like spirits loosed from the underworld, Maya raiders exploded from the forest. Armed, painted, screaming, they tore through the village like a storm. Fires roared. Spears flew. Huts collapsed in smoke. The men ran to defend, but were overwhelmed. The warriors moved with brutal efficiency. Some villagers were struck down where they stood. Others were captured, bound and beaten. Children screamed. Mothers were dragged by the hair, kicked, thrown, stripped and defiled before their husbands and fathers. Blood soaked the earth. The sacred fire turned to ash. Jaguar Paw grabbed 7 and their young son. He knew they could not outrun the raiders. Not as a family. So he made a choice. He led them into the jungle, found a narrow crevice hidden behind thick roots. He tied vines around them, lowered them into the pit. It was dark, damp, but it would hide them. He looked into Seven's eyes, promised her, "I will come back. No matter what. I will return." She nodded, said nothing, but her eyes said everything. He tied the remaining vine to a large stone. If he failed, if he died, the vine might still guide them back into the light. Then he turned. Alone now. He ran back to the village, back to the fire, back to the fight. He stepped through the ruins like a ghost, then saw them. A line of prisoners. Flint's guy knelt beneath the foot of a short warrior. Stocky and cruel, the man raised his weapon. Jaguar Paw did not think. He lunged, grabbed a fallen club, swung with fury. The warrior reeled back, blood dripping from his mouth. Jaguar Paw struck again, but before he could finish, a voice cut through the air. Deep, calm, terrifying. It was Zero Wolf, the leader of the raiding party, tall as a tree, covered in war paint, eyes like sharpened stone. He ordered the prisoners kept alive. They were needed for sacrifice. The short warrior shouted, demanded to kill Jaguar Paw, but Zero Wolf ignored him. Instead, he walked over to Flint's guy, lifted him by the hair, held his blade to his throat, not out of anger, but to teach, to remind, that no one defies them. Flint's guy met his gaze without flinching. He turned his head, looked at his son. His voice was steady. Do not let fear rule your heart. Stay true. Remember who you are. Then the blade moved. A quick stroke. Blood poured from his neck. Flint's guy collapsed. His eyes turned skyward. His soul returned to the forest. Jaguar Paw screamed. The ropes around his wrists burned. His body writhed. But it was no use. He was dragged to the others, thrown beside the fallen, and bound. A nearby warrior noticed the way Jaguar Paw had glanced toward the jungle, toward the place where his wife and son were hidden. The man followed his gaze. His eyes narrowed. He found the vine, cut it, then picked up a stone, dropped it into the crevice. Below, the sound of a child crying. The prisoners were tied to long poles, forced to march, their feet dragged, shoulders slumped. The forest watched them pass, silent and indifferent. Children who had survived the attack followed from a distance, quiet. Their little hands held no weapons, only longing. Zero Wolf ordered his men, leave the children. They are no use. So the youngest stood at the edge of the path, watching their parents vanish between the trees. A girl clung to her mother's necklace. A boy held a broken arrow. None spoke. Only their eyes screamed. Jaguar Paw turned his head once. Hoped they might wander back to the village. Perhaps find the crevice. Perhaps save his wife. But the village was ashes. Nothing remained. No path. No shelter. No voice to call them home. Deep within the earth, in that narrow pit, Seven cradled her son. His leg was bleeding, torn open by the falling rock. But there was no time to cry. She grabbed them one by one, pressed their jaws onto the wound, let them bite into each edge of the gash, then pinched off their bodies, left the heads clamped tight like living stitches. The boy whimpered. His body shook, but he did not scream. Seven whispered to him. Far away, the prisoners stumbled along a narrow mountain trail, one side a wall of stone, the other a sheer drop into the mist. Their hands bound, their necks tied to bamboo poles, each step a test of endurance. Then it happened. Cocoa Leaf lost his footing, slipped on the slick ground. His weight dragged down the others tied with him. Jaguar Paw blunted, and two more. The pole tilted, slid, then snapped from the ledge. The 5 men plunged into the air. Blunted acted first, hooked one leg around a root, pulled with all his might. The pole groaned. The tension tightened. Inch by inch he lifted the weight. Jaguar Paw pushed upward. The others followed. Muscles burned. Sweat poured like rain. Finally, they reached the ledge. Gasped for air. Faces pressed to stone. But just then, the short warrior stepped forward. He cut the cord holding Cocoa Leaf. The man fell. His body tumbled down the ravine. Zero Wolf saw it all. His face twisted with fury. He stormed toward the short warrior, eyes blazing, voice sharp as steel. If you kill another prisoner, you will die. No warning. No mercy. The short warrior lowered his head, said nothing, but rage smoldered inside him. His pride had been shattered. His humiliation complete. He glanced at Zero Wolf. Night fell. The jungle sighed. Fires burned in a small clearing. Prisoners lay in rows, exhausted. Warriors drank and laughed. The forest echoed with wild songs. Zero Wolf sat by the fire, removed the obsidian dagger from his belt. handed it to his son. Cut rock. He called it a symbol. A sacred heirloom. It would pass to the next warrior. It would carry his name, his strength, his legacy. On the other side, the prisoners buried small keepsakes. A stone from a child. A bead from a wife. None spoke. No tears. Only silence. The kind that crushed the lungs. The kind that buried hope. Above them, the clouds gathered. Wind howled through the leaves. The forest was listening. The sky preparing to weep. At dawn they moved again. The mist had not yet lifted. The forest was pale with dew. The prisoners walked in silence. Bodies aching. Eyes hollow. The warriors led them down the mountain path. Toward the great city. They passed through ruined villages. Shadows of once living homes. A little girl sat beside a corpse. Her mother. Pale. Rigid. Mouth open as if still screaming. The girl held her hand. Her own face expressionless. Empty. Not a single tear. When she saw the group passing, she stood. Slowly walked toward them. Her steps were light. But the warriors stepped back. There was something unnatural in her eyes. Something ancient. She looked at no one. Then began to speak. Her voice soft. Echoing. Not from her lips. But from deep within. The end is near. The sky will go dark. The Black Panther will rise. The earth will shake. The ones who bring death will meet their own. The warriors fell silent. Even Zero Wolf did not speak. The girl turned her head. Walked back to the corpse. Sat down. Never looked up again. Soon they reached the edge of the Maya city. Dust rose from a massive construction site. Slaves toiled under the sun. Their backs bent. Their faces red with heat. Whips cracked. Men coughed blood. Others lay where they fell. Motionless. Ignored. The prisoners were not stopped here. They passed through the labor site. Passed through the cries. The screams. Toward something worse. Beyond the work camp was a wasteland. Dry. Lifeless. The trees had died. The soil split open. Nothing grew. The people here barely moved. They stood. They swayed. Like scarecrows. Like ghosts. Then the city walls appeared. High. Stone carved. The sound changed. No longer cries. But voices. Trade. Laughter. Life. The market buzzed with motion. Merchants shouted. Children ran barefoot. Nobles bargained for fabric. 4 slaves. 4 feathers. The prisoners blinked. Confused. It was another world. One not touched by the sickness. Not touched by loss. Jaguar Paw looked at it all with a strange stillness. He felt the drums beneath his feet. He smelled the incense. He heard the chants beyond the wall. He did not know what waited for him there. But something inside him knew. Into the heart of the city. At the center. A giant square opened before them. At the far end rose a towering pyramid. Its steps narrow and steep. Its stones stained dark. As if the earth itself bled here. The women were pulled aside. Shoved toward traders. Examined like cattle. Young girls were prized. Hands reached for them. Eyes devoured them. They were sold without a word. Older women were cast aside. One was thrown to the ground. A trader said she was not even worth killing. Then the men were dragged toward the pyramid. Not to be sold. Not to be spared. They were meant for the gods. The king sat at the top, robed in gold and feathers, his face cold. Next to him sat the queen, still a stone. Beside them, a fat boy, the prince. His eyes gleamed with curiosity, like watching animals in a game. The high priest stepped forward, raised his arms. His voice thundered, "The gods are hungry. The drought has come. The crops have failed. Disease spreads. The gods demand blood." The crowd roared. Spears hit the stone. Drums pounded like a second heartbeat. The first prisoner was dragged to the altar, held down by 2 warriors. The priest lifted a curved blade and drove it deep into the chest. The man screamed once, then was silent. His heart was pulled out, still beating, and lifted to the sky. Blood gushed. The crowd held. The head was severed, rolled down the steps. The body was tossed behind the altar. Then another, and another. One by one, their lives ended in fire and cheers. Jaguar Paw's friend was next. Blunted watched, eyes wide, mouth trembling. But his feet moved. He did not resist. His body shook, but his soul was calm. He was laid down. His chest opened. His heart lifted. Then came Jaguar Paw. Hands tied, body trembling. His breath shallow. The priest's eyes fixed on him. The blade rose, but then, darkness. The sun disappeared. The light vanished. The square fell silent. A shiver passed through the crowd. People gasped. Looked up. The sky had gone black. An eclipse. The priest froze, looked to the king, then back at the crowd. Then raised his voice again. "The gods are satisfied. The blood is enough. The sickness will end. The rains will return. No more death today." The people wept with joy. They dropped to their knees, praising the gods. The priest smiled, his lie complete. Or perhaps his prophecy fulfilled. The gods had taken what they wanted. The sun had spoken. Jaguar Paw was dragged away. Alive, but not free. His body was covered in blood, not his own. His soul shaken, but not broken. They led the remaining prisoners down the other side of the pyramid. Zero Wolf waited, his face unreadable. He gave an order, set them free. Let them run, then hunt them. Like animals. 2 prisoners were untied. The warriors pointed toward the distant cornfield. If they reached it, they would live. The men ran, legs stumbling, hearts pounding. But death was faster. Arrows flew from the trees. One man screamed as a stone crushed his skull. The other was pierced through the chest. Blood spurted from the wound. He collapsed in the mist. The hunt had begun. Now came Blunted and Jaguar Paw. Blunted limped, still wounded. But he moved. Jaguar Paw pulled him along. They zigzagged across the field like serpents in grass, dodging arrows. A shaft grazed Jaguar Paw's neck. Then Zero Wolf stepped forward, raised his bow, released. An arrow struck the refugee behind Jaguar Paw. Another arrow flew. This one hit Jaguar Paw in the stomach. He collapsed. Breath gone. Pain sharp. Cut Rock charged, blade in hand, ready to finish the kill. But Blunted grabbed his leg, one last act of defiance. Jaguar Paw pulled the arrow from his flesh, seized a stone, and slashed Cut Rock across the throat. Blood poured out. He fell back, dead. Zero Wolf roared and ran toward them. But Jaguar Paw vanished into the corn. His body broken. His spirit unyielding. He reached the end of the field, faced a pit of corpses. Flies swarmed. Flesh rotted. Bones cracked underfoot. He did not stop. He crossed the grave, covered in death. He emerged into the forest, his only hope. Jaguar Paw ran. Blood still leaked from his wound. Each breath burned. His body trembled. But he kept going. The trees closed in. The forest swallowed him. He climbed a tall tree, hoping to find rest, just for a moment. But a noise came from above. A growl, low and deep. He looked up. A panther cub crouched on a branch, its body shaking. Eyes locked on him. Then came the mother. Massive. Black. Jaguar Paw leapt down. His legs gave out beneath him. Behind him, the panther lunged. A blur of muscle and fangs. Then chaos erupted. One of the Maya warriors appeared. He saw only Jaguar Paw, not the beast. The panther struck. Its claws tore through his face. He screamed. Blood sprayed the leaves. The forest answered with panic. The rest of the warriors arrived. They attacked the panther. Spears flew. Blades flashed. One warrior stumbled back. Stepped on something. A snake reared up, sank its fangs into his neck. He collapsed, eyes wide, blood bubbling from his throat. Another backed away in terror, his mind breaking. He remembered the little girl's words. The Black Panther will become a man. Evil will be destroyed. He could no longer tell dream from truth. He drew his knife, slashed his own artery, fell beside the dying beast. Zero Wolf still followed, his face twisted by hatred. He led the last of his warriors. Their numbers were few now, but his fury burned hot. He would not stop. Jaguar Paw packed mud into his wound, slowed the bleeding. He remembered his father's voice. Fear is a sickness. Calm your spirit. The gods will guide you. He pressed forward, toward the place he had hidden his family. Meanwhile, 7 still fought to survive. 2 monkeys appeared, fighting at the edge. One slipped, fell into the pit. 7 grabbed a stone, crushed its skull. A death, but also a gift. She had meat now. She could feed her son. In the jungle, Jaguar Paw moved like smoke, his body wrapped in darkness. The rain washed away the green paint, the mark of sacrifice. He was no longer a captive. He was no longer prey. He was the forest. He was the panther. He found a poison frog beneath a log, scraped its skin with a blade, dipped arrowheads into the slime, rolled leaves into a blowpipe, made death from what the forest gave. Then he waited. The last warriors passed through the trees, searching, tired, but relentless. Jaguar Paw climbed above them, held a beehive in his arms, and hurled it down. It shattered. Bees exploded in rage. Swarmed the men. Screams tore the air. One warrior ran blind, crashed into a tree. Another clawed at his face, fell writhing. Jaguar Paw struck again, blew the darts. One hit the neck, another the chest, a third into the thigh. Each man dropped, breath slowing, poison flooding their veins. Only Zero Wolf remained, and one last warrior. They followed Jaguar Paw to the edge of the forest. Their feet splashed into mud. The path was gone. All around them was silence. The cry of Zero Wolf faded into silence as the last warrior emerged from the trees. He saw the body of his leader and froze. Panic flickered in his eyes, but hatred still burned. He raised his bow and chased after Jaguar Paw. An arrow struck Jaguar Paw in the shoulder. He staggered, but did not fall. This time, he did not run. He turned toward the gorge. Toward the place where his family was still trapped. Behind him, the final pursuer kept coming. Both men burst through the forest. Their feet splashed through mud, their breath ragged. Then they broke free of the trees and stopped cold. Before them lay the vast ocean. Towering Spanish ships anchored offshore. On the deck stood men in iron armor, holding crosses, holding guns. A new world was arriving. The Maya warrior stared. His weapon dropped from his hands. He fell to his knees and walked into the sea, as if surrendering to the gods. No more war, no more hatred, only submission. Jaguar Paw looked on, unshaken, then turned back, ran toward the stone pit. When he reached it, the water had nearly risen to the top. Inside, 7 still held their son above the surface. In her arms was a newborn, fragile, cold, but breathing. A girl, born into mud and silence. Jaguar Paw called her name, reached down, pulled them up with bleeding hands. The wound throbbed, his vision blurred, but he did not stop. At last, they emerged. Together again, wet, shivering, but alive. The family clung to each other as the rain began to fade, and for the first time in days, light returned to the sky. 7 looked toward the ocean, toward the great ships. She took a step forward, but Jaguar Paw held her back. He shook his head. He did not trust what came from across the sea. He only trusted the forest, the land that raised them, the world they belonged to.